everybody. So today, our team is going to be presenting the article called "On the Folly of Rewarding A While Hoping for B." This article was written by Stephen Keir, and all along this presentation, we will try to first explain to you what we understood from it and try to draw some conclusions, and after open a debate. So to first explain to you, what this article is about. Basically, we want to do an example that is not about economics, that is not about management control, but it's just about life, nature as its primer's phone. So as you can see here, we decided to take the example of a baby. And first I'm going to read the quote from the author, and after I'm going to explain to you why the use and why the picture of the baby. So the quote is, "Reward systems that are fouled up in that behaviors which are rewarded are those which the reward is trying to discourage, while the behavior he desires is not being rewarded at all." Stephen Keir. And so the thing here is, as you must, I hope I have understood, we're going to talk about the rewarding system and incentives. So why the example of the baby? Imagine, I guess a lot of you have siblings younger, and I know that Berend has just became a father. Congratulations. Let's take the example of a baby. A baby is laying down. He's surrounded by his toys. Okay, well, he's okay. And at a certain point, he starts crying. The thing is strange because he already ate. His diaper is all neat, is clean, and he already slept as well. So he should be just living the normal life without complaining. He starts crying. As natural results, after a while, a parent or who's in the room is going to make him shush and stop crying. He's going to give him either his favorite toy or a biscuit, or he's going to cuddle him and give him attention, take him in his arms. As a result, the baby is going to say and going to understand that, okay, whenever I'm not happy and I want something, I'm going to cry. Because when I cry, I get it. Here I wanted attention, I cried, so I was cuddled, I received a biscuit, or I received my favorite toy. And this is the fact of a parent who is hoping for B, which is that the kid is normal, the kid is okay, the kid is happy. He should reward him for that, but instead, the kid is doing A while he's crying and complaining, and so, actually, the baby was rewarded for A and not B. Another quick example is, let's say a kid of 5, 6 years old. You must have seen them in the supermarket. These kids that want this type of cereals, let's say Crave, for example, this type of cereals where there's a lot of chocolate, a lot of sugar, and which is not quite healthy. And the parents say no, and as a result, the kid is going to start crying, going to jump on the floor, he's going to make a scene, he's going to yell, he's going to express his anger. And at a certain point, the parent usually, or at least that's what you see, and I know you've seen them as well, a lot will say, okay, you know what, just take it. Please stop crying, stop making a scene, stop, just be nice, take it, okay, you have it. Here, the behavior A, which is the one that is being rewarded, is the fact of making a scene, of being impolite, of not being, let's say, a good child, not being a good person, which is basically complain, make a scene. And the kid is rewarded for that. So he understands, okay, if I do this bad thing, I'm going to be rewarded for it. On the other hand, what the parent was hoping was B, which is, no, you're really nice. You didn't say word during while the 2 hours of grocery shopping. So at night, I'm going to reward you as it normally should be. Like, for example, you could have half an hour more of TV. No, instead of that, he was rewarding for A, which was the bad behavior, and not for B, which was the expected good behavior, which never happened. So along this presentation, here's how it's going to be composed of. First, there's going to be a summary of the article. Then we're going to see some examples of goal displacements, then common management reward follies. Then we're going to introduce a case study from our own. We're going to cite the causes of failed reward systems, what causing it, and try to bring some remedies, some solutions. Finally, there will be the conclusion and a discussion where we will give you a statement to explain you basically on what you can base the debate and what you can write on the discussion board. There will be a bibliography, and in the annex, there will be a bit of the life of the author.
So I would like to give you now a small summary of the article, link it to theories that we have seen in class, and also other content you might be already familiar with. So the formula we all, or the definition we all know by heart by now is what management control is. Management control are those systems, rules, and practices, values, and other activities management put in place in order to direct employee behavior in line with the organizational goals and strategy. According to formal management control systems, incentives matter a lot. They are rewards, for example, that motivate people to behave in a certain way. Using incentives is therefore a great way to influence the form, direction, and intensity of how people act. Goals also matter. They help us clarify where we're headed and how to focus our efforts. But a lot of times, goals and incentives can run opposite ways and directions. And when that happens, it's often in the form of rewarding A while hoping for B, according to Stephen Kerr. So what is he saying directly in his article? He starts by explaining that whether dealing with monkeys, rats, or human beings, most organisms seek information concerning what activities are rewarded and then seek to do those things, often to the virtual exclusion of the activities not rewarded. The statement itself is self-explanatory. However, it connects to three very important social theories. First of all, the rational behavior theory, which is in line with the expectancy theory. The rational behavior theory refers to a decision-making process that is based on making choices that result in the optimal level of benefit or utility for an individual. The expectancy theory suggests that individuals are motivated to perform if they know that their extra performance is recognized and rewarded. According to the social reinforcement theory by B.F. Skinner, individual behavior is a function of its consequences. Based on the law of effect, individual behaviors with positive consequences tend to be repeated, but individuals with negative consequences tend to not be repeated. He then continues to say that managers who complain about lack of motivation of their workers might well consider the possibility that the reward system they have installed are paying off for behavior other than what they're seeking. This is the classical phenomenon of goal displacement, which results when means become ends in themselves that displace the original goal. This research paper clearly exemplifies how reward systems are fouled, in a sense, since behaviors which are rewarded are mostly not the ones desired. There exists a misalignment between rewards and expected outcomes. In an effort to explain and understand this phenomenon, this paper presents examples from society, organizations, and profit-making firms. For the purpose of this course, we're only going to focus on profit-making firms and explain the theory in a bit more detail.
This would be an example of a goal displacement situation. Assume the manager of a company is confronted with these two alternatives. Spend 11 million for anti-pollution equipment to keep from poisoning fish in the river, or do nothing in violation of the law and assume 1 in 10 chance of being caught, with a resultant 1 million fine plus the necessity of buying the equipment later. According to rational behavior theory, this corporation can maximize its probabilities by flouting the law. Under this not a realistic set of choices, it requires no linear program to determine that this corporation can maximize its probabilities by flouting the law. Furthermore, the president is probably rewarded according to criteria totally unrelated to the number of fish poisoned. Another example of this situation would be World Bank claiming that its main goal is to fight poverty in the third world, but in reality, to stay in office, the World Bank must lend a great deal of money with no cheap interest. So these follies occur when managers design systems to reward certain behaviors, but in fact provoke other behaviors in response. In companies, sometimes there is a case when we hope for a certain action or behavior, but in fact receive another one and wrongly reward it, like expecting teamwork and receiving individual work, setting challenging objectives, and making employees focus only on making the numbers, or expecting to receive bad news early, and making employees report good news even if they are true or not. Ineffectiveness of these systems is often correlated with goals set in areas like where quantification is difficult and often goes unspecified. Organizations tend to look for employee effort in areas like team building and interpersonal activities related with creativity, but normally not reward none of this. Using promotions and raises to promote these desired employee behaviors makes a paradox, as it asks employees to set their own goals, which are risky, only to face smaller paychecks and damage with the risk of damaging their own careers if they are not accomplished. What agency theory seeks to understand is the contractual behavior between principal and agent. Managers are expected to pay attention to opportunities and study systems and programs that will pay off later in the future. But although this is what is expected, systems tend to wrongly look for short-run goals, like sales and earnings, being this an agency problem.
So to illustrate everything a bit further, we tried to find a real-life example. And what came to our mind was the sales scandal Wells Fargo encountered. So Wells Fargo CEO had to pay $41 million following the bank's sales scandal. And you might ask yourself, why? So between 2011 and 2016, Wells Fargo set goals for its lower level bank employees to sell additional products to its customers, a practice known as cross-selling. And up till now, there would be nothing bad going on since, like Milton Friedman said, the social responsibility of a business is only to increase its profits. However, the CEO placed a rewarding system which animated employees to operate on an unethical and illegal basis. These methods included the opening of 2 million accounts for customers that didn't request it, and even using fake customers to pad one's sales numbers. So what has happened? What happened at Wells Fargo is that the incentives and goals were such that people, more than 5,000, found numerous creative ways to cross-sell. Clearly, this was an era of management and leadership at a grand scale, because it's hard to claim that such a problem might be due to a few bad people or bad employees, since at least 5,000 were involved. Instead, it's the barrel, the system. And in particular, it's the incentive and goal setting system set in place by senior leaders. So that's why it's reasonable that the CEO was taken responsible. So incentives and goals, as we can see in this example, are important aspects to guiding people's efforts at work. And when properly aligned with organizational objectives, they can be powerful in harnessing greater good for the team. But it's equally important to remember that incentives and goals have unintended consequences, rewarding A while hoping for B, and this is clearly what happened in this example.
So when looking at the causes of faulty systems, we can say that even though the diversity of the phenomenon increases the difficulty in determining commonalities and establishing causes, we were able to come up with 4 general factors that may be pertinent to an explanation of why such fooled up reward systems are seems to be so prevalent in today's society. So the first factor is the fascination with objective criterion, which means that managers seek to establish quantifiable standards and goals, and this often leads to goal displacement. Nonetheless, many individuals usually seek to establish simple quantifiable standards against which to measure and reward performance of the employees. But what they don't understand is that such efforts may be successful in some highly predictable areas within the company. However, when applied anywhere else, they will only lead to goal displacement. The second factor is the overemphasis on highly visible behaviors. So in this case, the problem arises from the fact that some parts of a task are highly visible and other parts of a task are not visible at all. In this case, it implies that only the highly visible tasks will be rewarded. An example of this is could be team building and creativity. Team building and creativity are two behaviors that are very hard to observe and therefore are not likely to be rewarded by organizations. The third cause is hypocrisy. In this case, hypocrisy stands with management. What it means is that, for example, even though management is aware of the fact that there are rewarding activities that do not promote and they do not lead to the desired behavior, they don't care and they continue doing it. And finally, the fourth factor is the emphasis on morality or equity rather than efficiency. So as we've seen, many systems reward inefficiency, presumably in support of some higher objective. However, sometimes the consideration of other factors prevents the establishment of a system which rewards behaviors desired by the rewarder. We can also find a quote by Mark Graham Brown, which implies that an organization should find a balance between too many variables and too few variables, meaning that an organization should find a balance between quantifiable measures and quality measures in order to assess the performance of employees. So modern organizations theory implies that the members of organization and society have different goals and have different motives. Therefore, it is unlikely and managers and their subordinates will seek the same outcomes. So my group and I have come up with 3 possible remedies to this problem. The first one is selection. So theoretically, it is possible for an organization to employ only those individuals whose goals are aligned and congruent with the organizational culture of the organization. So in such cases, the same behaviors judged by the subordinates to be rational will be perceived by the management as desirable. Even though it seems one of the most reasonable and efficient remedy, state-of-the-art reviews of selection techniques actually said that it's not that successful and efficient, and therefore shouldn't be considered that much. Secondly, training. So the second remedy is training. In this case, the organization would also admit those employees whose goals are not congruent and not aligned with the organizational culture of the company, but would rather, through training, socialization, and other practices, they will alter employee goals to make them constant. However, also this remedy was found not to be that successful as it provides further grounds for pessimism. Finally, the last remedy would be, like the most successful remedy would be to alter reward systems. So in this case, managers who complain that their workers are not motivated enough should indeed consider the possibility that the reward system is not properly installed and therefore leads employees not to be efficient. So a first step for such managers should be finding out what behaviors are currently being rewarded by the reward system. And in most cases, these managers will find out that the firms is not rewarding what they assumed that they were. So in many cases, the rewarder is not causing the behaviors desired, but is only a bystander. Therefore, for an organization to act upon its members, the formal reward system should positively reinforce the desired behaviors and not constitute an obstacle to be overcome.
So in conclusion, what we learned is that there's clearly a mismatch between corporate objectives set by the managers and the measured outcomes of the employees due to the failed reward system. And it also comes from the fact that managers often fail to recognize these follies, which leads them to reap even more failures instead of success in their bonus system, in their incentive systems. And there's a quote that illustrates this well. It's a quote from James Clear, who's a famous New York Times author, saying that if we don't rise to the level of our expectations, we fall to the level of our systems, meaning that we already have those systems put in place and they serve more as boundaries for us, whereas we could find incentives that could push more creativity and better results as a whole for the company. So if one wants to make a lasting change, one needs to take a systemic approach, changing its systems to be more effective and reap the desired results. And finally, what will be up for discussion if we're going to take a fictional case of a technology firm that's struggling to obtain breakthrough innovations. And so its management is deciding to implement a new incentive system where engineers would receive a bonus based on the number of submitted patent applications. And so the statement that's up for discussion is that the reward system of the technology firm is fouled. However, there are alternative solutions that lead to goal congruence.